The next organic macromolecule we are going to learn about is a protein. So a protein, again, is the polymer, a long chain. And in this case, it's a long chain of amino acids. So the amino acid is the monomer. There are 20 different amino acids that exist. And the amino acids can be either hydrophilic or hydrophobic. And it has to do with, and that will determine their behavior. So some proteins can be hydrophilic, some proteins can be hydrophobic, some proteins can have both sides, so or one side of each. So proteins are in the in-between category. We learned carbohydrates are hydrophilic and will dissolve in water. Proteins can be either one. An important thing to learn about proteins is that there's a new bond to learn. So when we talked about water, we talked about hydrogen bonding. So today we're going to talk about the bond that holds two amino acids together is called a peptide bond. So just think P for protein. So peptide bond has to do with proteins, and then you can remember that. When proteins are made in your cells, they're slowly linking together the different amino acids. And so as a protein is being created, it is called a polypeptide. So poly means many, peptide coming from that peptide bond, many peptide bonds. It's just a chain of amino acids. Eventually, what happens with that chain of amino acids is that the chain will fold up into a complex 3D structure that then would be called a protein. So that is all the vocabulary we use in the science relating to proteins. Where or what do proteins do? So that's the word function. So function means what does it do? So what do proteins do? Well, they really make up a lot of our physical structure. The physical structure of a cell, the physical structure inside the cell, the physical structure outside the cell. So proteins are found in our cell membranes that help with that structure of the cell. Proteins are found in our hair. They make up horns on other animals. They are found in our skin, which is known as collagen. Our tendons and our ligaments, which are the proteins that hold our muscles together, or our muscle to the bone together, or our bones together. And then the muscle itself is a protein. So when you think about the human body, you are definitely mostly protein with some water, and then some fat and some carbohydrates, but really mostly protein. A very special protein that isn't listed here is one we want you to learn. It's called an enzyme. And an enzyme is a protein that is in charge of all the chemistry that goes on in your body. So it says proteins catalyze. Catalyze just means it's speeding up the reaction. If we waited for it to happen naturally, it would take too long. So it's really important to have enzymes. And they kind of control the chemical reactions that happen in our body. So enzymes do both. They can break things down or they can build things up. The picture here is showing putting two things to make one, and then this picture is showing two things being split apart into two, one being split apart into two. So again, it can do either one. We will be asking you to be able to identify the parts of an enzyme. So the substrate is the reactant. So in chemistry, reactants are the two things you mix together to make a product. So the reactants are the substrates. The active site is where those substrates fit. And notice it's kind of lock and key. This enzyme very specifically only does like one chemical reaction. So the substrates bind to the active site, and in doing so, then the enzyme is helping catalyze the reaction or making these two things come together to make that product. Notice the enzyme is not destroyed. It can be reused over and over again to continue this process. And so again, here you have one thing that's bound together. It hooks on perfectly, and in doing so, then it can be split apart. Now, enzymes and all proteins are affected by temperature and pH or salinity changes. So if it's used to running and your body at 98.7 degrees and your body goes up to 101, then the enzymes inside your body won't be working as well until your body goes back down to the correct temperature of 98.7. And that shows up when you have a fever is that you don't feel well, you feel tired, you feel lethargic. Why? Because the enzymes in your body are just not working right. pH changes can also do that. And then if you change the amount of salt, that can also change how well your enzyme works or stop it from working altogether. And if your body or your cell can then put things to right and correct the salinity or the pH or the temperature, the enzyme usually can like make it back and then do its function again. Where do you find proteins in foods that we eat? So dairy, meat, eggs, beans, and nuts. And notice the math here. 4 calories of energy per 1 gram of protein. So the same as carbohydrates. If you eat 20 grams of protein, 20 times 4 is 80. So it'd be 80 calories. And that concludes proteins.